Welcome to everybody who's joining us online, and welcome to all of you here in Brussels. How do we encourage more European architects to work abroad or internationally? That's the theme of this conference that's organized by the Architects Council of Europe and co-funded by the EU's Creative Europe program. We're also going to be looking at the internationalization of the profession and the common values that unite architects around the world. My name is Claire DOOLE and I'm your moderator. We have some really fascinating speakers and my job is to keep them to time and the day on track. A few housekeeping points. I hope that you've managed to get onto the Wi-Fi. The password is "How can I help you?" all lowercase with no question mark. So if you've got any technical issues, please contact Julie, who's at the back with the technical team. We have interpretation throughout the day in English and French, and there are headsets if you need them. Also, let me tell you that we would really like you to use social media, send pictures, send comments, and we would like you to use X at ACE_CAE or the hashtag #ExportArchie. Very easy to remember. We're going to be using Slido for a couple of polls, and you can see that that's the hashtag 1234. Again, very easy. For our online audience, please put your questions in the chat, and Gloria here will be filtering those, and when there's time for audience questions, we'll be taking those. For everybody here in the room, there'll be a microphone that goes round, so just raise your hand. So I think it's very fitting that this conference is taking place in the CIVA, which is a meeting place for all of those who love architecture. And it's my pleasure to introduce our host, Nikolaus HIRSCH, a German award-winning architect. There's going to be many award-winning architects that you are going to hear about throughout the day. Nikolaus has worked internationally, notably in India, France, and Switzerland. And he's not only an architect, but he's an author, editor, educator, curator, and the artistic director of the CIVA. So Nikolaus, please welcome, and we'd very much like to hear your opening few words.
Many thanks, and I really have to say it's a great pleasure to have the Architects Council of Europe with us today and hosting this event at CIVA. It's a great pleasure for me, especially. I'm probably one of the few architects actually at this institution. So it feels as what you will debate today is also very close to myself, because what I'm actually doing here at CIVA, which is kind of architecture museum, is to somehow debate and question architecture in a way like you do, from the perspective of the Architects Council of Europe and the Order of Architects and other organizations, but rather through exhibitions, through debates, lectures, talks, etc. And it's a practice which I think is crucial to raise awareness of what architecture can do and also what the problems are for architecture, because I think we really have to question many parameters of our work, of our role in society, mainly in a context of climate crisis, of political tensions, of economic challenges. So it's somehow a fantastic, really exciting time to rethink how we are going to work and how to redefine in a way what our role is in society and what actually we can do. Because sometimes I tend to think that our role is diminishing, and many architects today question a bit what they can do in this kind of very rapidly changing world. Just to give you an example, our last exhibition was called Power. It was an exhibition on energy, on the questions of climate crisis for architects. But it also played very much with the double meaning of the word power. So it's certainly energy. On the other hand, it's a political power that's at stake. And it also foregrounds maybe a question which is somehow, to me as an architect, very important. I was raised at university, certainly with a fascination of architecture as a creative practice, where you was this fantastic situation. You could somehow reinvent the world on a blank sheet of paper, a kind of tabula rasa situation. Whereas today, I think we are dealing much more with the existing. We are shifting away a bit from a fetishization of the object to a much more systemic view of what the role of architecture might be today. And I think this changes everything. It also changes curricula at universities. I've been teaching a lot at universities. So this is really exciting, I think, to redefine what this work as an architect might be in the future. And this is also where I see what organizations like yours are relevant and important. I tend to think, I have to be totally honest, that this is the most boring thing on earth, to deal with lobbyism, with regulations, etc. This was, when I studied architecture, this was probably more like what we didn't want to do. And this was almost like an enemy you had to work against. Whereas today, I tend to think, like many of my colleagues, that actually this is a creative job, what you are doing. And I think in that respect, I wish you a great debate to somehow help us redefining what our role might be in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikolaus. And indeed, many challenges in the world, many challenges for architects. But as we'll see today and hopefully be inspired, there's a lot of creativity. As I said, the conference is organized by the Architects Council of Europe, and I'm delighted to ask the president, Ruth SCHAGEMANN, to say a few opening words.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nikolaus. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues here in the room, but also online. Many thanks to the artistic director, Nikolaus, for hosting us here in this inspiring surroundings. You already mentioned it's about innovation, it's about creativity, and I think that's the essence of our profession, I would say. And so I'm really delighted that we have the opportunity to discuss the topics today here in CIVA. I'm also delighted to have the support as a co-funding partner, Creative Europe program. With this money, this conference is made possible. The Architects Council of Europe has been an active partner of the new European Bauhaus, and we therefore really are honored to be selected with this conference as a satellite event of the new European Bauhaus. And Nikolaus already mentioned it, we are in the midst of a big transformation process. And this transformation process is not only connected to Europe, the challenges we are facing are global. The shape of our cities and rural areas is a reflection of our society, of our values, and our responsibility also towards the people and towards the nature. And it's time to act. This is what we are advocating for also in the European election period. And it is time to act because we must change the way we are living in our environment, how it is designed, how it is built, how it's maintained, how it is renovated, managed, and regulated. And we need to adopt an attitude that favors the common good and the quality of life and puts people and nature at the core of all spatial and urban developments. On our mission to achieve a high quality of living environment and architecture for all of us. Today, I'm really looking forward, and Claire, you already mentioned it. We are going to hear from nominated architects, award-winning architects who have worked abroad, they have faced challenges, and I'm personally really looking forward to which solutions they have developed. Today, we also want to put in perspective the international work of European architects. And today, we want to discuss together the relevance of the values in the new European Bauhaus for architects, not only in Europe, but around the world. So today, it's about a more beautiful, a more sustainable, and a more inclusive environment for all of us. Looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth. And indeed, we're going to be digging deeper into those values later on. As Ruth said, this is funded by the EU's Creative Europe programme. We're going to hear from them later in the day. We're also going to hear from Commission representatives from DG Grow and DG Trade. But now let's hear from the President of the European Parliament, Roberta METSOLA, who's recorded this video message for us.
Friends, over the past 3 years, the new European Bauhaus initiative has come to form an integral part of the European Green Deal and has helped foster an active and growing community of creators from all European Union member states and beyond. The movement has brought together people from the arts and culture to educators and innovators, from local and regional authorities to businesses and citizens. And I'm glad that in supporting the new European Bauhaus initiative, as well as the Davos Baukultur, the Architects' Council of Europe sees the merit in preparing European architects to meet the challenges and opportunities of a changing world. The exportation of EU high-quality services is key for the future of the European bloc's economic growth and its standing in the global economy. This is why the growing internationalization of European architectural practices is relevant in our drive for a more sustainable future. I am glad that architects across Europe are at the forefront in terms of expertise in combating the effects of climate change and hence playing an unprecedented political role. Architects professionals share a common drive to improve their processes. They share common values, and the European Parliament is committed to accompanying you on that path. The recently adopted Energy Performance of Buildings Directive will help the EU building sector meet climate neutrality by 2050. It also aims to promote the sharing of the best European practices and information on building energy performances in order to improve them. With globalization and technological progress, architectural firms now have greater opportunities to collaborate and work on projects across the European Union and beyond. Many will tell you of how expanding horizons has borne fruit. There is every reason to believe that further internationalization of the profession will pay off for businesses, for people, and for the protection of the environment. That is why you are here today, to learn from one another, to assess how building sector professionals can get the optimal support to set the highest of standards in the industry. And in that endeavor, be assured that the European Parliament will continue to be on your side. Thank you.
So we'd very much like our online audience and also everybody
Dear
here
friends,
in
over the past
CIVA.
3 years, the new European
We would very much like to ask you a very simple question. So if you go online and put slido.com and then this password, #1234, we're going to ask you a few poll questions throughout the day. And the first one is really the easiest. And the question is, which city, perhaps it's not a city, perhaps it's a village, are you joining us from? Thank you. And I think there's going to be no surprises that Brussels is very dominant there, but very interesting that from our online audience, we've got people as far away as Lithuania, Pristina in Kosovo, and Arvod. Now, I don't know where that is, but I'm sure somebody can tell me. But Worms, so we've got Germany, and we've got Paris and Netherlands. And thank you for the Lithuania prompt. So that's good that we've also got Bratislava, Krakow, Poland, Belgrade, truly, truly Cork Island, truly you're European. Spain, quite at Timișoara, Romania. There we are. This is a check of my understanding of European cities here. So excellent. This is fantastic. Also Cyprus, Nicosia, that we've got so many of you joining us. That was the simple question. The next question is, we would like to know how many of you have actually worked internationally or exported your services internationally. You may know, and we're going to be talking about this quite a lot during the day, that ACE has done this sector study. And it shows that only 5% of European architects work in another European country. It's even lower beyond Europe. So what's the case with you? Online and in person? Do you already export your services in Europe? Today, we're going to be looking at the benefits of that, some of the concerns, and we'll check back with you at the end of the day to see whether you feel like joining that 5% and the benefits of working abroad. So very simple, yes or no. And we can see that the yes is doing very, very well. I suppose we would think that people who are attending a conference on internationalization have interest, at least in the subject, and want to know more. And that's certainly what we're going to be doing today. So thank you, everyone, for participating in that Slido poll. Thank you. We are going to start by hearing from two very, very well-known architectural practices. One is based in Paris and is known as the 2P, Architects and Associates, the 2P, Architectes et Associés, and also of GMP, Tobias KEYL. I just wanted to check whether Elizabeth is in the room. Super. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's the light that's here is very difficult to see anyone, and especially when you raise your hand. So let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth de PORTZAMPARC, the founder. The P, interestingly, stands for her and also her husband, Christian PORTZAMPARC, another award-winning architect. So they are the 2Ps, and they've recently merged their agency. Elizabeth is an architect and a sociologist, and it's a multidisciplinary team that she and her husband have gathered around her, not only of architects and planners, but also sociologists and anthropologists. And they say, however, that they're still a small and medium-sized enterprise. So Elizabeth, thank you very much for joining us from Paris. Please come on to stage, because Elizabeth has worked abroad, not only in France, and she's going to show us some of the projects that she's and her team have worked on in China. So if you would like to go to the lectern, we are all ears. Thank you very much.
So I try to. I don't have the thing to.
The clicker is making its way.
Okay,
there.
thank you. Yes. Yes. Before speaking about exploitation for architecture, I think it's very interesting to speak about this theme in a symposium. Oh, yes. Oh, I forgot. Before speaking about the subject, exportation of architecture, I would like to speak about the relationship between the new Bauhaus and the exportation that we are living now. In the beginning of the 20th century, as we know, architecture became totally disconnected from its context, from the climate and from way of living of people. And I try, I'm convinced that you are living now a tremendous changing, tremendous revolution, mutation. And I'm writing a book since I started from more than 10 years before, 10 years ago, about the these mutations that we're living. I made a conference with the title was the revival of our of architecture and of our civilization, and the idea to build in France or in other countries now in this period was in a new way more adapted to the context was a real challenge because our industries are totally involved in modern process of building, totally disconnected of the climate. And we are living a period of ecological transition, and I defined some principles to guide my own conception, and it becomes a process, my team process. And I defined some principles to be to try to use local materials, to try to make very economic shapes, and to use a few materials in order to do economic projects, because with the cost, reduction the cost of the projects, we can imagine new kind of spaces, new kind of constructions, new kind of different things that you need, because we need to invention. So in the Bauhaus, I think the parallel between Bauhaus and what we are living is very important, because Bauhaus was created in the beginning to propose a new kind of conception, very artisanal, art craft way to conceive things in opposition with industry. And we are living the same kind of thing. Now you have to introduce new ways, new ideas to conceive projects in order to change our industries that are totally involved with old process of to build. And now we are trying, if you try to suit some new principles, architectural principles, we can have directions and try little by little to bring to industry new ideas, new ways to build, and so that's why I try to do in my office. But I show 3 kinds of examples in China, very different, in a very big town as Shanghai, in a very small town is in Fengxiang, in north of China, and in forest, a very old forest in the south of China. So we have three kinds of context. Here, I was, it is the Science Hall of Shanghai that opened last year. And of course, it was not a question to change in industrial process of building. It's a very, very big project with 120,000 square meters. And I try to propose new kind of space, new ways to live, to connect people, space for conviviality, and to bring nature in this part of town that is very mineral. So I created a park, 20,000 square meters park, green park, but with many small buildings. You see the round one on the top, in order to have to propose also not only a paysagistic way to live, a green park, but a park that you can use to do many things with attractions. So we are climbing from the town, from the ground floor. We're climbing very easy way, and you find a small kiosk, small buildings where we can put coffees and restaurants or make exhibitions, events, and that it is very used for now. The photo was in the beginning, but now the trees are growing, and you have even rapes. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting space, green space, and very useful with many. Here you have a hall, here another hall. We have two halls, and all those small buildings that you can find. And in the ground floor, you have a huge square, covered square, where we can do events. Here it was a school that was doing something with the teacher, and it is a space of 10,000 square meters linked to the street, and it is a covered space that the building offers to the city. So the idea is to use architecture to propose a new way of life, new space for conviviality, and green space to reconnect nature and architecture. And for the materials, I only use ceramic, steel that can be reused, but the structure is also in steel, but it is a very traditional way, modern way to build. Here, it is a museum, an archaeological museum in the north of China, in Fengxiang, and near the museum, we have two small villages, traditional villages, and on the building, I'm using the building is continuing the green space, the surrounding green space, and it becomes also some. It offers some points of view very interesting for the site. And in the project, I use local materials, artisanal materials in the facade and on the roof, and the artcraft pre-existing on those villages will be used on this building, and the architecture will be the occasion to develop, to provoke an economic development of all those areas. And so I use the occasion to do an archaeological museum to provoke an economic development. And the last one, it is a touristic development in a very old forest. And I thought it as a real manifesto for the protection of the nature, because I'm using the trees, as the old trees as a structure. I'm using only local materials as stone and wood, and also ceramic, and the shapes evokes a little bit the shapes of the traditional village surrounding this area. And I can't show everything, but you have many kind of constructions, but all them totally integrated in the nature with local materials. So in each kind of context, each kind of scale, I'm trying to use methods very different, adapted to the place.
Thank you, Elizabeth, very much. Please do take a seat. And a round of applause. We can see how important sustainability is. Thank you very, very much. I would now like to introduce our other award-winning architect, Tobias KEYL, an associate partner at Architects von Gerkan, Marg and Partners in Berlin. Please come and take a seat next to me, Tobias. GMP, I expect many of you know, it's one of the top 10 architectural practices in the world, with more than 500 employees from more than 50 countries. And it's worked on more than 500 projects and won more than 400 awards. So some very impressive statistics there. Elizabeth, if you sit there, and I'll give you a microphone, and Tobias, if you sit next to me, we're going to do an illustrated conversation here with Tobias. You can see some details there of this practice and how big it is. We're going to find out about two projects of the many projects that GMP has created abroad. And we're going to start with Nairobi and this massive building, which is an office block. And there's also the JW Marriott Hotel and a shopping complex, Tobias. So how did you adapt all of this to local conditions?
In addition, we have 4 residential towers.
Oh, wow.
Working in Nairobi was a new experience for us, and everything should start with a visit on site. And the first impression that we got from the site visit was that Nairobi has serious issues in terms of security. There is a severe terroristic activity in the area. There is a huge gap in terms of poverty and in society. So the natural reaction is that most developers, most new properties, they build up huge walls. And so the city is a space without common space. You have roads and spaces in between, but never a shared space as we know it from European cities, for example. So that was one of the first things that we noticed and that we wanted to do different. Of course, we had to incorporate all these topics of security. I'll just keep skipping. But instead of having many small little castles, we wanted to have an invisible fence that does not show the barrier, but of course the barrier had to exist as we're dealing with an office towers for highly ranked international companies and a JW Marriott that is ready to host any president of the world. But we wanted to make at least the spaces in between within this complex as transparent and as shifting as possible to create this space in between.
And as you say, it was for an international office space, JW Marriott, very international. How international was the team that worked on this?
The team, again, was very, very international. We were brought there by a Chinese developer. And of course, we worked with quite a lot of Chinese engineers due to the connection of the developer to the region. And then it was us as an international office, but also many consultants from the UK, from South Africa. For Marriott, we had to work with Marriott that is represented in Dubai. There was an interior designer from New York City. So we were basically scattered all around the world, different languages, different cultural backgrounds, different time zones. So I don't think I've ever worked on anything more international than this one.
Yeah, sounds very United Nations
Yes.
there. We heard from Elizabeth about her importance of working with local materials. Sustainability is really at the heart of what many architects are doing now. How major role did sustainability play in the GTC Nairobi project?
Sustainability is incorporated in every single one of our projects. You don't always see it. You created the term discrete sustainability, which I tend to adapt already. But we always try to reduce to the max. See what is really necessary. And Nairobi is a very, very mild climate, ranging between 24 to, in the worst case, 19 degrees centigrade. So you don't need much climatization as we would do in China. And of course, the first impulse from all the international engineers that we were working with was bring in mechanical engineering. And we said, no, let's keep things as simple as possible to also, again, adapt to the local conditions. Let's use self-shading facades. As you see it here, the office tower has these extruded fins, while the hotel, where it's all about views, is then on the exterior. But within these gaps or the fins, there are openings for natural ventilation. So we don't have mechanical cooling. And everything is integrated into this facade. And even though it is 184 meter high office tower, highest office floors in East Africa, you can just do natural ventilation by screened windows, so that the big winds on the facade and all the other impacts that you have on high-rise facades are screened and protected, and it works just like more or less like a single-family house in terms of mechanics.
So discrete sustainability in Nairobi. Of course, GMP has done a lot of projects in China. There we are, social sustainability as well. The ESG, the S of ESG, social sustainability. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, on the top left, you see one of the pictures that we took on one of the team meetings. And on the bottom is one little story that I like very much about this project. Well, first of all, it was about knowledge transfer. And of course, international exchange between us, the Chinese, the Kenyans, us, the Kenyans and us. So it was in any direction. There's lots of things that we can learn from Kenya, for example. We had programs within the process of planning, but more so in the process of construction, where we invited students from the University of Nairobi, engineering students, to be on site to see the construction ongoing. It's something that is not very common in Nairobi. We have to admit that this is a very futuristic project for them. So they got to learn and experience these technologies firsthand. Due to the sheer size of this project, there was a bigger impact on the overall road system, more or less 1 kilometer around the project. Every road was tested, checked. We had simulations on the traffic to be expected. So roads were upgraded and widened. And the same for the supplies, the sewage systems, rainwater. So it's not just the project, but there is a big radius of impact. And back to the little picture on the bottom, and materials, local materials. As the client is a big engineering company or manufacturing company from China, they of course had the first intent, we bring everything from China. Very soon they understood that this is not going to work. If you ship all this, half of this stuff will come to Nairobi, to the site, and be broken. So we had to produce local as much as possible. Of course, Kenya is not the market that can supply all these materials, but there were a few things that were available local. So some of the glass for the residential was acquired locally. We shifted to aluminum facades for all these white elements that you see, because there is an the chance to produce aluminum locally, but of course not in the quality and the sizes that we need. But the Chinese engaged one of the local suppliers and created a joint venture. And what you see on the bottom is this local manufacturer that set up a shop in these parking basements of us and basically created a local factory.
So they did the best they could to source locally when they could.
And the big benefit is that after this project was done, the locals were able to keep the machines, they have the technology, and they now have a shop outside of Nairobi, and they keep producing similar styles of facades. So out of this, a local factory and a local market arose.
Right, fantastic. So as you say, really transfer of knowledge, hard skills, soft skills, social sustainability, as well as discrete environmental sustainability. GMP works a lot in China. There's this other project here in Guangzhou. So was this a project where sustainability was less discrete and played a bigger role?
Very much. CSCC, the client, is the world's largest general contractor. They have built the highest, the tallest, the best, the biggest. They have done it all. And this is their headquarter in South China. And already in the competition brief asked for a future high-rise tower, something that is ready and is showing what the future of buildings can be. So this 180-meter high tower, we tried again to reduce to the max, to see how much do you need, where can we go as minimal as possible in terms of technology. And again, we went and checked, or there we didn't have to go, we know Guangzhou very, very well. What are the local conditions? How did they build for centuries? You see on the top right, what are the systems of natural ventilation used? What are the systems of shading? What are the social spaces that make this space livable for centuries? And how can we transform this into a modern building?
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing those two projects, Tobias. That looks very complicated. The previous one looks a very complicated slide. I will perhaps just move on to a couple of questions because time, I also have to put my Master of Ceremonies hat on as the time manager here. Elizabeth, let me just ask you, from your projects when you have worked abroad, there must be many challenges, but what would you say was the one lesson learnt when working internationally for you?
I think it is the transfer, the technological transfer, because you are bringing in other countries our know-how and our principles, our thinking, but also techniques. And for my Chinese project, in Shanghai, I brought some prototypes of ceramic and other things, and the local industrial were doing the same, could do the same thing. But I could, and in other countries or other places of China, it was very interesting because I think they are expecting to learn with us. And here in Europe, when we built in German, you have all the things are very normalized, and we cannot bring now our know-how. You have to to obey the industry way to build, and it's very difficult in Europe to do innovations. It's easier in China, in Brazil, here in Europe, in Italy also, it's easier. I don't because the Italian industry wants to innovate. It is the more innovative industry in Europe, I think. But I think in Spain also.
So there are certain countries in Europe which
yes.
are more innovative,
Yes,
less
I
regulatory.
think that the change, the industrial change, will come in the north of Europe, from the south of Europe, or from China, perhaps.
There we are. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very important. Tobias, what was the lesson you learnt from working in internationally?
Listen to the people, listen to the team, the locals, learn from the locals, and design in dialogue, really. And I think that applies to anywhere in the world, Northern, Southern, Eastern Europe. There's always something to learn, and you only succeed if you can explain your ideas in a way that you reflect on the conditions that your audience has. You cannot go and preach. You have to pick up on their knowledge, their traditions, in order to soften in whatever you try to do, based on your understanding of the local conditions.
Yes, absolutely. Designing in dialogue. And Elizabeth was talking about learning, and I'm wondering whether it's a two-way process. When you come back to Germany, is there a hard skill or a soft skill that comes to mind that you could apply to your work in Germany?
It's very much the same, design and dialogue. But as you said about in Germany, you have to follow rules. There are very strict deans and codes and many, many things. On the other hand, when you come back, you know what's possible. And sometimes, again, you have to speak to your clients, to everyone around, knowing all the codes, but still explain what's possible. And then innovation is possible in Europe just as well. You just have to show them that it can be done. Maybe you need to be a little bit creative on some of these rules, but they're not hard-written Moses-like facts hammered in stone. Usually they say you should, you could, but they hardly say you must. But many of Germans understand that this should, could is a must. And I think sometimes you have to point out that there's a slight difference.
Yes, you can use your creativity. Elizabeth, yes.
Yes, in France also, I tried to establish a good dialogue, and I finished a library, bioclimatic library, because in Brazil, of course, in Nairobi, it's very often to do a bioclimatic things, with natural ventilation, and I could do it in Paris, but we don't have wind in Paris. The context is totally different, so you have to use ventilation on the floors, as you use in tropical countries, and a little bit of technology and materials very that could keep the cooler during the evening. In the evening, we open the windows, and you have some materials that keeps the cooling and the fresh air of the night, and they restitute during the day. So you have to use technology. You cannot use the same ways of thinking in Nairobi, in Brazil, and in France, of course.
Absolutely.
But we have to do bioclimatic. I'm doing another one in the south of France. It is very, very hot, but we have wind. So it is another context, so we can build another way also.
Thank you. So yes, it's all about adapting to the local context, designing in a dialogue and taking the best of the ideas that you glean internationally and then applying them when you can to Europe. So thank you very, very much, Elizabeth, for explaining some of your projects, some of your values, and Tobias too. A round of applause. Thank you very much to our two leading architects. And if you would like to leave the microphones here, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. No problem. So As we heard from Elizabeth and Tobias, sustainability is very, very important. We are now going to look at common international values for achieving quality in the built environment. And we're going to look at the values that unite architects around the world. We asked you that question when you registered. And what are the values for you? And here are some of your answers. You can see environment comes out very, very large. There's also culture, ethics, quality. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into those values now with our panel. Let me ask Ruth SCHAGEMANN, President of the Architects Council of Europe, to come back onto stage and to join me. Please take a seat next to me, Ruth. Also, I'm delighted that we're joined by Donatien Cassiette-Calumier. Donatin is an award-winning architect who trained here in Brussels. He set up a practice in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where he's particularly known for renovating the former Grand Hotel building in the capital, Kinshasa. He's president of the African Union of Architects. Now that represents, if I've got the figures right, 80,000 architects in 43 countries, and they promote the profession regionally, and they aim to build capacity so that African architects can be competitive on the world market. Donatien, please come and join us on stage. Thank you very, very much. We're also joined online by Saifuddin AHMAD, President of the Architects Regional Council in Asia. And Saifuddin, if you look at his bio, you'll see that he sits on so many different boards and panels, far too numerous to be mentioned here. As an architect, he has also won awards for designing the low energy office of the Ministry of Green Technology and Water in Malaysia. And I hope that he is going to be able to join us from Malaysia and that we'll see him in vision in a moment. And we also have an award-winning Argentinian architect. I just say that Gerardo MONTARULI is going to speak in Spanish. So if you have some headsets, you might want to put them on. I know I'm going to put mine on. Gerardo has sat on many juries and he's advised on many architectural competitions. And since 2020, he's been the president of the Pan-American Federation of Architects. That is a massive geographic responsibility, North America, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So those are our panelists, and we're going to dig a bit deeper on the values. Can I just check? Because if I don't see, we don't know whether they're there or not. Can I just check that Gerardo and Saifuddin are with us? If somebody would like to give me a sign of life, that will really help.
Hello.
Hello. There's a voice there. Is that Saifuddin?
Yes, Saifuddin. Yeah, I just can't put my camera on.
Okay. And Gerardo, I can hear there's some Spanish being spoken. I can hear you. I'm just waiting to see whether I can get a translation here. Okay, he's now testing my level of Spanish, which I think he can hear me, but he's waiting for the translation. Sí. Esperando para la traducción también.
I'm a Spanish translator speaking into English now, but I'm switching back to the Spanish channel.
Just ask what channel this is on the headset.
I'm hearing you fine. I'm the Spanish interpreter. I'm waiting to hear Gerardo.
Have we got Spanish? And if so, yes, you're going to speak in Spanish.
Yeah, I'm the interpreter, the Spanish interpreter. I was just trying to hear everybody well. I can see Saifuddin's image, but I can't see.
Hello. Hola. ¿Qué tal? Gerardo is, I think it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Where, yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. So thank you. So absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us. There we are. That's Saifuddin, and Gerardo is there. And sorry, I have Gerardo in my earpiece. Do we have Gerardo on the screen as well? I know, but I'm just wondering whether we're going to see him.
Yeah, I'm the Spanish-English interpreter. I'm not seeing him and I'm not hearing him.
Fine, absolutely. It would be so nice to see him, but perhaps because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, he's in his pajamas talking to us at the moment. Okay. Okay. I have Spanish though. I don't have English. Yes, I need translation.
I'm trying to pick up on Gerardo. I am the English translator. I'm the English interpreter.
And I'm now here.
I'm the Spanish into English interpreter, but I'm not hearing Gerardo. Can you hear me, Claire? Claire, can you hear me?
I'm hearing Gerardo anyway.
But
But he hasn't joined. Okay.
I'm the English interpreter. I'm the English interpreter. I'm not hearing Gerardo at all. I'm just hearing Claire.
Ruth, you mentioned at the beginning new European Bauhaus values. We heard from Elizabeth that her architectural principles were very similar. Can you just set the scene? What are these new European Bauhaus values? Because as you say, this is a side event to that festival.
First of all, I want to say that the architects are already dealing with these values since a long time. So basically, the new European Bauhaus, time-wise, is after all the activity that the architects are already doing on the ground since a long time. But now it really becomes crucial also on political level, because with the new European Bauhaus, suddenly we are discussing in the European Parliament, in the European Commission, about these values which are at the core of the architects in Europe and international. And that's a real big game changer, because until, let's say, 2019, let's say before Corona hit us, in Europe, we were only discussing energy efficiency. And with the new European Bauhaus, with let's say, defining what is the need of the people in Europe, what are the values that we create, not only as architects, but also as planners, as engineers, for the people, suddenly becomes a total different discussion environment. And I think that's one of the big changes the new European Bauhaus made. And now we're not only discussing sustainability, we are discussing about beauty, we're discussing about inclusiveness, and that is a total different context at the moment.
So we've got these three values, beauty, inclusiveness, sustainability. Ruth, which value resonates most with you?
Well, I thought a lot about it, and well, there are only three, so basically we could say, okay, easy to choose. But I decided for beauty, and let's say, for me, beauty resonates here in this discussion most, because I really want to highlight it's not easy beauty. Sustainability is done already since a long time. Investors know about sustainability. It's a well-known subject, but beauty and how to incorporate the beautifulness of our built environment in laws, for example, is extremely difficult. It's difficult to define, okay, how are we going to reinvest money into beauty? And therefore, I just want to highlight it that it is something to think about because it creates identity, it creates a space of belonging, it creates it summarizes different values that lead to a more inclusive, sustainable living environment for the people and keeping also nature in mind.
And you have a photo of that you would like to share, I believe, of what it means to you. We have a photo, I think, that we wanted to show. Am I right in thinking it was in Manchester in the UK? It was the Whitworth Gallery, which in your eyes showed beauty. If we want to show that, then let's do it. Otherwise, we'll come back to it later if there's too much technically going on there. Donatien. So we've got beauty, we've got inclusiveness, and we've got sustainability. Which of those values really resonates for you and your work?
First of all, I will ask, because I've seen that people have headset, because I dream in French and I cry in French.
Don't cry, please don't cry.
Am I allowed to speak in French?
Please, yes, but keep the microphone really there because otherwise it's difficult for the translators.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. La durabilité or sustainability.
Sustainability.
As we said, we discover now what is sustainability in the new world. Aujourd'hui, nous réfléchissons à cette sustainability, à cette durabilité, mais elle est dans nos gènes en Afrique.
So it is practically genetic for us in Africa, sustainability, because in order to build your hut, you used to take the soil, the earth at the end of your garden, and you used the tree that was planted in your garden. So sustainability is intrinsic to Africa. We unlearned that sustainability when we started importing technology. And I have 3 pictures about sustainability.
Let's see if we can show the 3 pictures. I know there's certainly one of those pictures that's available, which was of a glass bottle house. Do we have that? Yes, we do. I've got a thumbs up. So perhaps we'll see that one in a moment. I know we've got this one, Donatien. Okay. So please talk to this one.
Voilà ce que moi j'appelle la durabilité d'aujourd'hui.
This is what I call today's sustainability. It is a sustainability that involves the reuse of an imported plastic material, because in the past in Africa, we drank water from the source. Plastic bottles fill our rivers, our sewers. And by reusing these bottles, we can nowadays build houses. I think that, well, it is a German company that started training the local bricklayers to build houses with plastic bottles. With 6,000 plastic bottles, you can build a house for a family of 3 to 4 people. This is the new sustainability. This stems from the new awareness that we need to use things that are potentially harmful to us to build housing. So this is a very good example of the new sustainability.
The people who are involved in this.
Why German influence? Because
you're sitting next to Ruth, that's why.
No. When I say why German influence, because you can ask, okay, but Africa is sustainable, is already sustainable. Why a German company or a German firm should come to Africa to teach them how to? Because plastic bottle didn't exist in Africa. That's why they came. So the plastic waste is now used to build a wall. Okay, so that transition, you cannot learn it from the local ground, because you're not used to plastic bottle. You see, but for me that's very interesting, because it solves a lot of problems. That kind of approach.
Yes, circular economy and recycling, absolutely. And I can see you want to touch it, and it feels so tactile.
Exactly.
So, Donatien, thank you for that. Let's move back to Saifuddin, who's in Malaysia, and hopefully we can see him, because it's so much easier talking to somebody that you can actually see. Saifuddin, thank you for joining us. Which we've heard beauty from Ruth, we've heard sustainability from Donatien. Which is the value that really resonates with you?
Okay, I'm actually responding as the president of ARCASIA, and I'm going forward on inclusivity. The reason being is that if you look at in the background, okay, the one in yellow, okay, when I took over as president of ARCASIA, my mission is based on the acronym LOVE, which stands for Legacy, Overall, or Inclusivity, Visibility, and also Environment. And when I talk about inclusivity, is that, as you know, Asia is very, very, very big, from North Korea to Bhutan on this side of the globe. And of course, it's very diverse, okay? It's very different from Europe. You have the European Union, that sort of thing, whereas ARCASIA is just actually a council of institutes, president. So on that note, we try to include everyone in whatever projects that we do, or in whatever policy that we intend to look at. And of course, there's a few things that we need to look at, because as I said, in terms of diversity, it's just not what they call from climate, it's also in terms of a lot of policies, in terms of culture and architecture itself. And what we try to do is to get everyone involved in whatever projects that ARCASIA or any other institute that need to implement that, from the most developed countries like Korea, Singapore, Japan, to the smaller ones like Bhutan, Brunei, and Macau, that sort of things. So I will go actually on inclusivity.
Inclusivity, and thank you for pointing out the icons. Is there a picture that for you illustrates inclusivity?
Okay, I've already shared earlier with the secretariat. Can the secretariat share
Absolutely.
the photos?
They should have some
please.
pictures that you can talk to. Yes, please do show them.
Okay, maybe one of the projects that.
Absolutely. We're waiting to see them on the screen, Saifuddin. They're working very hard behind the scenes. This is quite technically challenging, as you can see. There we are. We have one of those pictures from the archive.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. If I can share with you what this project is all about, okay, it's actually a universal public toilet, okay? And the project was conceived way back in 2013, okay, whereby the president then, Tan Pei In, okay, and together with the ARCASIA Committee of Social Responsibility, Joseph Kwan, envisioned a project that what they call can be shared by everyone. And it was actually conceived in Kathmandu, Nepal, and as such, the project was actually initiated in Kathmandu itself. And how it's done is that it involved the three entities: ARCASIA, the what they call Society of Architects Nepal, and also the Ladlipur Metropolitan City of Kathmandu, one of the what they call suburbs over there. And how it's done is that it's financially sponsored almost 90% by ARCASIA, okay, and another 10% is actually by the local authorities, but the society itself actually organized a competition, and that competition was held, but unfortunately it was only solely for the Nepalese architects, and it was won by one of his members, architect Neeraj Maharjan, but it took a longer time in terms of getting the location, locating and also dealing with the local authorities, although it's actually just a toilet, but involved a lot of what they call stakeholders. It was only completed in the year 2021. And just a bit of background, as you know, in Kathmandu, sometimes public toilet is very, very difficult, and it's not accessible to everyone, and especially with regards to the gender usage. So this public toilet incorporates facilities for the physically disabled people, the elder citizens, and facilities like sanitary pad vending and disposal machines, breastfeeding chairs, and infant diapers are also incorporated. So in terms of the word inclusivity, is that it involves the 22 member institutes who contribute some funds to this project. It involves the local society to get the competition done, and it involves the local authorities and the government to provide the site itself. So on that note, ARCASIA is looking into inclusivity.
Really fascinating. As you say, it's a simple public toilet, although there was a very good Japanese film that came out here in Europe recently, which was all about toilets and the life of a toilet cleaner, which was absolutely gripping. And they were state-of-the-art toilets. And as you say, it was a whole project involving so many people. So inclusion is very important. Saifuddin, I'm going to limit you to one, just in the spirit of fairness, because Donatien had one photo. But thank you. I think that really does embody your value of inclusiveness. Let me just see whether Gerardo is on the line. No, I'm afraid he isn't. I think it was most probably asking too much to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we've got each one has chosen a value, and of course these values underpin quality. Saifuddin, what does quality in the built environment, what does that mean to you?
Okay, it's very subjective looking at which area itself. Okay, of course, again, I'm answering this question in my capacity as ARCASIA president. Okay, and I said Asia consists of the most developed and also the underdeveloped, Nepal, Bhutan, that sort of thing. So quality is very, very subjective, but that doesn't mean that you cannot have comfort, you cannot have the best of facilities. Material-wise, again, it was interesting, the earlier talk that was done by Elizabeth and also Tobias itself. Okay, it all depends where the project is. Okay, and of course, in the most developed countries, the what they call the material use, the method of construction use is a bit more advanced. But whereas in the underdeveloped countries or in the outskirts, say India, Bangladesh, or even Indonesia, for that matter, local materials are used, local construction methods are being used. But at the end of the day, you get an architecture which is actually usable, architecture that gives comfort and also what they call comfort to the people who are using it. So it's very diverse.
Very diverse, but as you say, it's all about the user, the people, the comfort. Donatien, what either with your hat as the president of all of those African countries, or you as an architect, what does quality mean for you?
qualité est d'abord le confort de l'être humain qui vit dans les espaces qui sont.
Quality is first of all means first of all securing the comfort of the human beings who have to live in the building. Quality means for me proper development of the human beings living in the building. We can do things that are of very high quality, but which are ill-adapted to human development. So I'd say that we have to put human beings back at the center of what we do. And that's where we find quality, because aesthetic quality or a technical quality is meaningless if it is not interaction with human beings.
From what you've heard from Saifuddin and Donatien, do you agree, or do you have another view of what quality means?
I absolutely agree. And we also saw in the two presentations at the beginning from PORTZAMPARC and also from GMP, wonderfully how architects outline their quality throughout their values for the architecture. And in Europe, we are discussing a lot about the Davos quality criteria, because we all speak about quality, and then the question is, okay, what is behind? We heard great examples now, and maybe just to reflect on these 8 quality criteria and also on the NEB compass. It's about governance, for example. So it's about good processes, good governance processes. It's about functionality. Does the piece of work, which is not only architecture, but also maybe public space, fit for purpose? This has been mentioned. It's about the environment. Does it protect the environment? We have diversity. We have the context and the sense of place, which is enormous. It really has to relate to the situation where it is built. It's not about, and I think this is very crucial to know or to keep in mind, there is not one fits for all. No, so it really has to be defined at the place of origin where it is going to be located. And with the end, beauty is also a part of it.
So I have to ask just for clarity, because we can see that there's an overlap between the new European Bauhaus values, the 3 that we've just been talking about, beauty, inclusion, and sustainability. And then there's these Davos criteria. Why do we need 2?
Wow, that's yes, it's a tough question, but let's say it really shows that there is this need to bring these quality criteria to the ground. The Commission took its own, let's say, strategy with the new European Bauhaus and the Compass, for example. The Davos Declaration has been already on the ground since longer. And now we are really in the process of evaluating. The Commission and the colleagues from Switzerland are really working together to figure out where do they have overlaps, how can they support each other, and how to further develop it together, so we don't have, let's say, 2 concepts in parallel.
Yes, that often happens if I think of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the EU Green Deal. How do they work together? Just picking up on something about putting the person at the heart of this. Ruth, in Europe, it's very favoured that there's these participatory processes with local communities. Why is that seen as a good practice?
I think we just saw great examples. The outcome is totally different. The outcome is the people identify themselves with the public space, with the architecture. They have a sense of belonging. It's really about putting the people at the front and really also evaluating what are the needs to really define, okay, for which purpose are we building here something or creating public space, and therefore we have to listen. This was also one word which was highlighted today. We really have to listen to the people they are using this living environment, and therefore it's of utmost importance.
I'll ask also Donatien and Saifuddin about this concept of participatory processes. I mean, it sounds wonderful, but there must be some inherent challenges in it. Donatien, your take on participatory processes as a good practice, and do you see any inherent challenges? And I'll ask Saifuddin the same question.
Je suis content de voir Madame Elisabeth PORTZAMPARC qui
I'm
est
happy to see French speaker Elisabeth de PORTZAMPARC. She's French and Brazilian.
un exemple que j'ai appris sur les bancs de
I have an example which I learned when I was studying architecture.
Je pense que ça s'appelle le couvent de la Tourette.
It's called the
Construit par Jean
La Tourette Convent. It was built by Jean Mourel.
duré 6 ans.
The building lasted for 6 years,
Couvent
and
duré 4 ans.
the life of the convent lasted 4 years. The concept was interesting and brilliant.
Les Jésuites ont commandé
The Jesuits
à Le Corbusier
ordered
commanda Le Corbusier donc ce nouveau
to Le Corbusier this new convent. It was necessary to come back to traditional values. The treatment of the walls was really rough, was really not very much refined. Everything was well thought out intellectually, but in practice, the monks who lived in there started committing suicide. I speak here under the control of those who know the story. But there were so many suicides that they had to close the convent, and it is now used as a museum. So the building is a reference in terms of respect, or in terms of architectural, intellectual quality, but from the human point of view, it was a disaster.
What was the reason that it was seen as wrong for those nuns who unfortunately took their lives?
Parce que la vie monacale interprétée par Le Corbusier.
Well, it's simply because Le Corbusier, based on the brief he was given by the Jesuit, who reintroduced very harsh elements. The furniture was made of concrete, so the walls were not smooth to the touch. There was no direct view from within your cell to the outside. It's all because of these concepts. And these were in line with the brief, but it was miles away from the quality of human life within a convent.
About imposing from a hierarchical point of view, and that you have to consult the people that you're designing for. Absolutely. Saifuddin, what about in your context, this idea of participatory processes? How common are they? Are they encouraged? And do you see any inherent challenges with the process?
Okay. In my personal opinion, as an architect, okay, whether you are Asian, European, okay, African, or wherever you are, okay, by virtue of training, so when we do anything, it's for the people, is to safeguard the environment, human comfort, and everything else. But unfortunately, as architect, just like what Elizabeth and Tobias has mentioned earlier, in the countries where they have their projects, you have to actually follow the regulations of that country. You have to look into the what they call local construction methods and a few other things involved within that location itself. And of course, as architects, we try to give the best that we can. Okay, but unfortunately, some of these regulatory bodies, or even some of the clients themselves, okay, they might look at something that is not suitable for that location that we are doing. So there's two parts. We as architects try to advise the clients the best possibilities, the best what they call solutions to the project. And at the end of the day, know how you come to a compromise and to get the best result.
Thank you. And I'm going to move in a moment, I think, to over-regulation, because it was already referred to by Elizabeth and Tobias. But we heard a good practice that comes out of Europe, the participatory process. Let me ask you, Saifuddin, briefly, for a good practice that comes from your region in terms of policy or regulation or incentives. Is there one that works in your context?
Okay, as I mentioned, okay, every country has its own policies, he has its own ideas, but what we do at ARCASIA itself, okay, because we have many committees, okay, we have the professional practice, we have the green sustainabilities, we have the, what they call CSR. So what we do among the 22 countries is actually to discuss and debate what are the best practices that is done within their country, okay? And on that, we normally have what they call town halls, we have what they call roundtables, and from there we come to a conclusion, and subsequently the 22 institute try to actually address it with the government of that country to be able to practice what is the best that has been concluded within that roundtable or what they call workshops that have been held.
Yes, absolutely. The value added that we can see of your association with these workshops. Donatien, in the African context, what would you say was a good practice? Is massive. It's 43 countries, you've got 80,000 members, you've got the north, south, east, west, lots of different languages. So I'm asking you just to choose one.
If I have to choose one, I will choose the country where I live,
yes,
which is DRC, and the answer will be so easy.
Mm-hmm.
There is no regulation, okay? Because the emergency is not there. The emergency is to provide a roof
yes.
on each and every one right now, whatever kind of roof it is. Okay? Ça, c'est je réponds bien entendu par rapport à la République démocratique du Congo. Il y a des
This
pays,
is the answer I can give you for DRC. There are countries like South Africa that are more advanced in terms of legislation. You've got also countries like Kenya, countries that have more of an Anglophone tradition, that are more developed, but unfortunately, there is a lot of diversity in Africa. If you go to Sudan, and if you ask him what the legislation is, he will laugh at you, because what he wants to do is make sure there is a roof on top of his head. Very often, the regulation is a copy-paste from what exists in Europe, but in the day-to-day life, we are still very far from focusing on regulatory aspects, even though sometimes, applying the copy-paste procedure as being productive, but this hasn't been generalized yet.
Well, that's good news. So let's see Gerardo on the screen. Gerardo, hello. Hola, Gerardo.
Hola, buenos días. Perdón.
Hello, good day.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's lovely to see you.
Encantados de
Thank you for joining us. Gerardo, we have moved on in our discussion, but it would just be good to hear from you what is the value of beauty, inclusion, and sustainability that really resonates with you?
Bueno,
Well, for us, inclusion for America. I'm going to speak in Spanish. Inclusion is one of the values, basic values, that allows us to attain some sort of balance in the different proposals from the different countries. Because from our Pan-American Federation of Architects, so that our cities are less exclusive. It's a question of we need to improve the urban context. And one of the essential things here is related to inclusion, to participation of these institutions, to be able to achieve integrative policies, to identify proposals that really do focus on the reality of the Pan-American countries and the enormous cultural diversity. We have to adapt to the policies through, for example, in the north of the continent, in the Caribbean, for climate reasons, or in Latin America in general. The fact that the financing policies, for example, for housing, for both public and private, have been overcome by the demand, by real demand. In recent decades, that has risen higher than the ability of governments and other entities, private sector, to respond, to satisfy the demand of the population, which is more and more vulnerable. So it's one of the biggest challenges we face, to have cities that are able to provide basic industries for their inhabitants and be able to adapt to change and to actually carry out policies that will foster development and provide opportunities without affecting the environment, but nevertheless providing basic services, creating a balance between economic growth and social well-being and the environment. Our federation works hard on identifying exemplary actions that can be applicable in other cities or places to be able to apply assertive policies that will be well accepted by the population. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerardo. And indeed, as we have heard that Pan America is a massive region, and obviously the issue of inclusion with the big social disparities between the rich and poor, and as you say, affordable housing. It's something that around the world is a problem, that people are no longer able to live in the center of cities, but in the exterior. And obviously, this is something that is of concern to your association. Is there an example of where inclusion or inclusive architecture has worked? Do you have an example of best practice?
Sí, seguramente.
Yes, for sure. We have great examples. The Medellin in Colombia, for example, with a social architecture that managed to reduce the sort of the violent climate, if you like, due to the drug trafficking, and there was a lot of social aggression. Basically, Curitiba in Brazil, through excellent connectivity and greater inclusion of the green spaces and finding this balance between public and private spaces, they've managed to create policies that have specifically integrated elements. Another example, Mendoza in Argentina, with very strong winds and a lot of lung diseases, for example, as a result, they managed to plant more trees. And considering trees as a public service in the city, and that created a whole new ecosystem that allowed them to reduce by 10, 15, or 20 degrees, or doing away with drought, reducing pollution levels, and creating a positive ecosystem for their inhabitants. These are examples that have allowed us to, they can be applied in other places. Quito, for example, there's a whole tree planting system going on there in Ecuador, and based on criteria of the cities of Curitiba or Mendoza.
Thank you very much, Gerardo, for indeed giving us examples of inclusion in Medellin, in Colombia, in Mendoza, in Argentina, and Quito in Ecuador. When you joined the discussion, we were just about to look at some of the challenges. And Donatien was talking about the fact that there is no regulation in his home country, which perhaps could be seen as a boon rather than just a bane. But Ruth, over-regulation in Europe, we heard from Tobias that you have to be creative, that a could and a should, those lovely German modal verbs, don't mean that you must. So is over-regulation a problem?
Topic at the moment in Europe in the discussion, because we are going through an evaluation process of our regulation. How much regulation do we really need to build for the purposes and the challenge that we are facing? So basically we are the other extreme, yes, and we developed into a situation where regulation also lead to higher cost in construction, lead to more complexity of the planning process, and and we are discussing about a high comfort living, and the question is this high comfort really needed on such a level, or can we reduce it? Is it so dramatic that you hear a bit of your neighbor, or how much silence is needed in a private apartment? So these are the questions that we are heading, and it's absolutely the opposite. So we overturned our regulation, and we have to come back more to a simpler approach. And also that doesn't mean that we have to cut back anything, but we really have to evaluate what is really needed. And
don't tell the Swiss that. I live in Switzerland, and they love their measures against noise pollution. Gerardo, are you still with us? We've got two diametric opposites on regulation. Obviously, DRC, there isn't any in Europe, especially in Northern Europe. There's an awful lot. Pan America, it's massive. So I don't expect you to talk about that. But what is your feeling on regulation? Has it gone over the top? Do we need to get back to something simpler?
¿Me puede traducir en castellano? No entendí la última parte, la pregunta.
I was wondering, in your region,
yes.
Is there over-regulation? Ruth was saying that in Europe, she thinks they've gone too far in the direction of over-regulating.
No, bueno, no entiendo la pregunta, disculpas. No tengo traducción.
Gerardo wasn't listening to me in English, I thought. He was listening on the wrong channel.
¿Cómo está la situación de las regulaciones en Panamérica? Aquí estábamos discutiendo que en el un lado, en África, no hay regulación y Europa está regulado demasiado. ¿Cómo son las perspectivas en vuestra situación?
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. The big diversity, the functional diversity that we have in terms of policies and regulations that are very different. But generally, in most of our countries, there's a large, obviously, impact of the states on regulations, and especially in terms of anything to do with building regulations, to establish parameters or policies, planning policies, they're often pre-established. What often happens is that the enormous demand for space for construction, especially of housing, and that exceeds the capacity of the policies to regulate that are established. That will distort this type of planning, especially in the regulation of the market, in terms of the value that land has. There's an over-dimensioning of land. This lack of capacity of the state to face this demand creates these spaces with the tremendous imbalances within cities.
Thank you, Gerardo, very much. I'm now going to take some...
If there is a possibility to give an example, Gerardo, ¿hay una posibilidad de dar un ejemplo?
Bueno, nosotros tenemos, por ejemplo,
For example, in Mendoza, we had anything that had to do with protection of public trees, of urban trees. It's part of a public service which allows the improvements in the quality of life of people in a city. But the state often, when a city grows in an uncontrolled way, and their sectors are not developed to handle that, that creates a reduction in the number of trees that can be planted. And that creates heat islands, if you like, within the cities.
Thank you. I'm going to go to audience questions now. Thank you, Elizabeth, for already starting the process. There's Saifuddin already online. I'm going with my Master of Ceremonies hat on to say that we're going to start the coffee break, most probably about 10 minutes late, but we can also extend it the other way. So what I'd like to do is to take some questions from the audience for Saifuddin, who's still online, Gerardo, for Donatien and Ruth, and let me ask whether there is any question from our online audience. Is there any question from our online audience? Is it Gloria who's tracking that?
Not really a question, more a comment.
Okay, if you'd like to say briefly what the comment is.
So from Anastasia, she's saying that as architects, we have to admit that architectural aesthetics is the missing link in our education and profession as well. Aesthetics is included in architectural quality and we have to elaborate on it. And then she's saying something about education, that there are countries such as Greece where urban design is almost totally missing as a postgraduate course. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing in her point of view to the discussion. Let me ask whether there is anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question to Gerardo, Saifuddin. Tobias has got his hand up, so a microphone is going, and Elizabeth has got her hand up. So we're going to take a question from Tobias. Who would you like to answer the question?
I think it's more, as you started with beauty. I think this is the most difficult one to frame. As we all know from architectural history, the ideas of beauty have changed almost like fashion. There was a mentioning of La Tourette, which to me is the absolute beauty of architecture. The topic of suicides was new to me. Never heard of it. Nonetheless, we'll have to research on that one. But how do you ever want to regulate beauty? Again, asking this with the background in German
How can you
laws.
regulate beauty? So there we are. Beauty was your value. And please answer your fellow Germans' question there.
Process that we are thinking about how do we have to transform our existing building stock. All the design decisions that we then take as architects for the time being will then be evaluated if we were able to create beauty in the future. So we'll see what our society creates nowadays, and in 50 years the next generation will then decide if that what we created today can be called Baukultur or is a beautiful living environment. So this is really difficult to put in regulation, but we have to think about it. We have to discuss it, and it really has to be part of the transformation process, because otherwise, if we leave it behind, we just go for functionality maybe. That's also not the right direction.
So there we are. Time will tell.
The I mean, every building that society loves, they will never demolish, and that's the first step into sustainability. The longer these buildings stand, the better all the balances will be, and that's definitely something that we can underline as our office.
Thank you, Tobias. Elizabeth, you also had a question, and then the gentleman behind.
I'd like to say two compliments. One about beauty also, because you know that social housing or some social buildings that are considered as ugly without quality, they are contributing to the exclusion of people. And when the quality of the architecture is nice, it is contributing to the social inclusion. And another example of you spoke, Gerardo, about Curitiba, and as my family is French and Brazilian, so I know both countries very well. And the mayor of Curitiba, Jaime Lerner, it was a very respectable city planner. He decided to work for the inclusion because there was 4 communities, the Japanese, the Italian, the Polish, and another one that were fighting. And they create in a park restaurants and activities with products from Poland, another from Japan, another from Italy, and everybody was coming. And the people learns to see and to speak to each other, and the problems with the conflicts with the different communities were solved by a clever idea to put together all those communities. It's
Thank
a very
you.
good example of social inclusion.
Thank you. If you'd like to give the microphone to the gentleman behind you, and if you have a question, I think Saifuddin is still online, Gerardo, Donatien, or Ruth, and this will be our final question. You can ask many questions to Donatien and Ruth, and also to Tobias and Elizabeth during the break. Sir.
I want to pick up on the idea of regulation on beauty. This sounds like a horror scenario for me as an architect. At one point, we tried to get rid of regulation, which is not needed, but also not wanted. I wanted to add this because there would be a matter of participation, I think, of how this kind of overregulated terms are actually needed, but also wanted by the public. In terms of beauty, I would think there are a couple of quite valuable quality assurance systems in place since a long time, like the architects competitions, where it's clear that you can, in a competent jury, find out the quality of beauty as well, which can be discussed and decided on. And I think we know this tool we have is in place since the middle of the 19th century, so it's well approved. There are also design advisory boards in place in lots of cities in Europe, I guess also in other places, which also focus on this topic. So there's no worries about that we can judge on beauty, I think, even if it's constantly developing, of course.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that comment. I think there'll be a whole conference on beauty and architecture. So it is a very, very important value, as we have heard, along with the other new European Bauhaus values of sustainability and inclusiveness. And then, of course, there are the Davos criteria. But we can see from our architects who represent Pan America, Asia, Africa, and Europe that they are very much united in these values, particularly of sustainability and inclusiveness. So I'd like to thank Gerardo for getting up so early and for joining the conversation. Saifuddin, if you're there also, thank you very much for joining us. Donatien also. Ruth also for her translation abilities, which are very impressive. So let's take coffee for half an hour and we will come back at 11:20 if my maths serves me right. And we'll now be looking very much at the subject of internationalization. Thank you.